I guess I'm live, but I'm gonna just start talking while people come into the room. And if you do come into the room, let me know that my internet is working good, because I'm not actually connected to this weak ass Wi-Fi that normally I have when I come out here. So I'm going straight direct. But the inner child, I had some things I was, pondering on this with. Sometimes adults look at children as, let's say, limited because they're not as intellectually intelligent uh, as they are. You know what I'm saying? As adults. But it's funny enough how there's times I've been told, for example, that I speak too fast, or let's say that what I have a lot. What I put out is it's pretty much there's a lot to unpackage and whatnot. There's uh there's a lot of stuff that they're kind of not grasping, but then I can see this in my, let's say my immediate life right now, where I have a son who right now he's 10, but he went to Colombia when he was 8 and didn't speak any kind of Spanish, for example, and went to Colombia for almost a month and came back speaking pretty fluent. Not fluent, like I'm talking about perfect, but at least holding a conversation with somebody who speaks Spanish. Even though his words sound a little bit broken, he made improvements that an adult cannot do. Uh, like the. So let's say, for example, me when I was a young kid, I didn't speak a lick of English, and I started to speak in school. I spoke Spanish only, but because in my house they only spoke Spanish, so I started to, you know, just talk, just interact with people with no shame. I wasn't like ashamed of the fact that I didn't speak English. My goal was just to interact. I wanted to interact at all costs with individuals in school. So regardless of how I spoke, I tried my best to understand them, and they tried their best to understand me. So there really was no shame or guilt there at all, And then, coming into, let's say, adulthood, um, let's say there were situations in your life that you may have put aside or stopped doing because you put more importance on what society deemed acceptable and important over what you wanted to actually do. Like what you were uh, doing didn't matter as much as others' opinions, you know? And as a child, you always want to do what the hell you want to do. You can always tell that a child will actually even start to cry and throw a temper tantrum or a big fit, you know what I'm saying, if they don't get what they want. And most of the time, you either were scolded and punished or told no, and you had to just do whatever your parents say, and then you grow up as an adult kind of following in those same patterns where you are doing things that you don't want to do, only to fit into society, only to fit into, to make it conducive to society to some extent. So, you started to acclimate to the environment rather than being told that the power really is in the fact that with your mind state, you can have everything mold to you and cater to you rather than you be at the mercy of whatever's going on outside of you. The same way you are absorbing your environment, just are that environment. You know what I'm saying? But sometimes I say man don't know any better, right? Now, kids, for example, have the ability to learn new skills, such as, like, let's say they're better at learning sports a lot quicker than somebody at a later age. They're more flexible and malleable, and one of the reasons why they can learn a lot quicker is a childlike curiosity. It's kind of like a curiosity that leaves them open-minded, but with purity. They're just pure. That innocence is not ignorance, but it's innocence, right? But they really want to they really want to learn. So like I mentioned in the video before, like it's not, it has nothing to do with how much you get, it's how much you want to get, you know. Like in any way you go to school, most of the time you're not really interested in learning those things, but you're still getting it into your subconscious mind to some extent, because even if you could tell that there's kids who tend to look like they're falling asleep in class, and even if the teacher didn't grasp or get them, you know, to catch them rather falling asleep, that information or whatever it is that they're listening to is actually getting recorded in them to some extent, right? Which is why, you know, you'll hear that the Jesuits at one point said, you know, give me a child from the age of 1 to 7 and I'll show you who the man is. So a lot of this is coming down to you know, you're at a certain point in that where you're open to all things. Now the maturity of it is, let's say when you're an adult, you can actually become sort of like a gatekeeper. You decide with discernment and intuition what you allow in and what you don't allow into your space, right? So when I look at, for example, as a child, or even just the whole aging process, where people say age ain't nothing but a number, a lot of the times we believe, and as a collective we believe in this whole aging process. You know, I was watching that Billy Carson video with the DNA and whatnot, and how they capped our you know, they added the telomeres and whatnot, which they basically capped our, you know, our genes or the chromosomes and whatnot. But see, when you look at your body, you're nothing but cells and two major. You look at matter being basic space. When you look at a picture of an atom, you can have a picture of an atom based on the school of thought entertains the system for realism. But when you look at quantum is basically just looking at it. It's invisible because it's empty space, so it wouldn't even appear on camera. And I'm gonna tie that into the video that I'm gonna talk about with the alien invasion and whatnot. But it's kind of like when you, like, you know how you see clouds or like fog and whatnot, when you're far enough away you can see the structure of the clouds and fog, but when you start to go through it, it's like you don't see that structure anymore. It just becomes kind of like invisible, so you're like going through it. So it's kind of like when you look at a tornado, right? A tornado has a structure, but because the force is picking up dirt, rocks, and all that kind of stuff, and it's making a vortex of some sort where it appears to look like a tornado. But if you take out the dirt and the rocks, right, and it would just be invisible, it would look like a clear day. But if you drive really quickly through that tornado, regardless if the rocks and the dirt was taken out of it, you would actually, it would feel like you're going right to a brick wall, right to a brick wall, even though there was really nothing appearing to be there, because you took out, because there's something called a force, right? So that's what kind of like, that's what you're made of. You basically, what's holding you together is that force, right? So if all those things are basically empty space and these things are inside of you, and based on what you're told, these things can actually have you believe in these things so much, and as a collective it holds more power, that you start to believe in the aging process, because everything comes down to life is just a succession of now. So when you're here as an adult now, it's not to say that my childhood is over. You know what I'm saying? It's just that you changed the way of doing things. So we're in a system where it's not conducive for you to act like a child if you're an adult. Like if I play with toys and somebody tells me, hey, why are you still playing with toys? You're not a kid anymore. See, I may feel ashamed and embarrassed that I got caught playing with toys. I may put my toys down and feel guilt and ashamed about it. And I stop doing what I wanted to do, only to cater to what that other individual said about me, that's not conducive to what I'm doing. You get what I'm saying? So as a child, when you start to hear certain things, or even get disciplined so harshly all the time, and be told that you know, not to do certain things, because a child is always going to want to do what they're doing. They always want to do something. And if they don't get to do it, they throw tantrums. You can see that. It's like they want to do whatever they want to do. And the more that you know, indoctrinate them and tell them no, 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 just measure the amount of no's you tell your child over yeses. You know what I'm saying? And that's, their no is fighting your no. And that's the whole thing. Even that thymus gland, right, that sits right in front of the heart, starts to atrophy through time based on the fact that they're not doing what they really want to do. And it all has to be done with structure. You get what I'm saying? It's not to say let a child do whatever the hell they want to do. Yeah, we raise our children. There has to be a structure. But either way you put it, we changed the way of doing things. Like once upon a time, when we talked about the ancient pyramids, right? We were told that it was built by man. They're technically not lying to you. It was built by men, right? They told you they used ramps, sledges. They used all these things. And these are primitive tools, right? But yet we've come so far with technology, and even with today's technology, it's hard for us to replicate these ancient structures like megaliths and monoliths, right? So what does that mean? So does that mean that it's lost technology, ancient lost civilizations, or did we just change the way of doing things? Because the way I see it, we used the most advanced piece of technology is your body. This is the most advanced tool. We used the body, right? But not with primitive tools. We used our body in ways that it was designed to be used for. Not to use these tools to put our body through physical labor, you know? And that's why when you start to hear these stories of the Anunnaki and they created a slave race to mine for gold. But then you look at the word gold and you see the L. When you take the word L out of the word gold, you got God. And that L is man. L, like Mikael, Raphael, Gabriel, Uriel, right? All these L's, that's because that's the symbol of man, right? So when we start to say mining for gold, now we start to say, well, these are gold miners, right? And we have kids and they're miners. But these kids, they're born with their chakras all lit up. And they know more about God than you do. However, we're still trying to communicate through language, which is designed to hide and occult many things that you are, and what you're bringing into this world with your spouse is another being that's a part or a direct version of you. So if it's coming from you, and we start to study these alignments, the viral kingdom, bacterial kingdom and whatnot, right? And we start to look at, we're communicating with trees and we communicate with the animal kingdom and all this stuff, but you're communicating with your child through human language and saying goo goo gaga and all these type of words. But in actuality, if you really try to communicate with your child, especially when they come into this world on a much deeper level, it's not that you're going to expect to get some type of telepathic communication back. But it's like the same way when I communicate with plants outside, I'm not really talking to my plants. But a lot of inspirations, ideas, and things start to come in. And then this is where synchronicity starts to happen. Brand Zen, what's going on, brother? Hey, Organic Intelligence. And and that's why when I'm in my garden, it's now synchronicity starts to happen. People say, I'm doing so much research, I can't find, I'm doing a lot of research and somehow I'm not getting it. You never really feel fulfilled. And the whole thing is that when you start to come from a different space where you're like a child doing what you want to do, and you're doing it with harmony, your presence has a positive impact on your environment, which is you. And that's why they say man comes from the soil, you die, you go back to the soil. But these plants, even the way they grow, the way they react to you, with your presence alone, this alone gives you, this is what we call downloads, right? And that's why if I'm in my garden, I'm getting hunches, inspirations, and ideas, and all of a sudden, even technology like the computer start to work in my favor, where if I have certain things in mind, I may get answered through a video or even a song, or certain people may just come into my reality that I may have a conversation with, spark a conversation with, and boom, we just had a very, very enlightening conversation. So now you start to live your life synchronistically rather than forcing, right? It's kind of like in the business world, they always tell you this. How does the law of attraction work? right? It starts from you first. You don't see the world for how it is, you see it for how you are, right? So sometimes is putting yourself in their shoes as well. You know, most of the time, these kids, when they want to do certain things, okay, in guidance is better than trying to control your children. But the children are the gold miners. You know, when we talk about these Anunnaki, when we talk about all these things, these slave race and whatnot, we use these Anunnaki. You are the Anunnaki. You know, you are those Anunnaki. And then we talk about, like, you know, the creation and whatnot. But think about this though. You live your life in a succession of nows. You just changed the way you do things, no different than you changed the way of how you used to do things. These megaliths and monoliths, try to replicate it today. It will cost billions of dollars to use today's technology to replicate those things back in the day, right? So what happened? Money wasn't a thing back then, you know? These people, they were building these structures for a reason though. And that's why I said I'm going to get into how these pyramids tie into certain things in your body along with the land. Matter of fact, I'll even get into it lightly, but I want to get into it deeply in another video, right? Because I'm going to come in with certain points that we look at when we study anatomy and physiology and biology, biochemistry and whatnot. But if you look at the pyramids just in and of itself, right? When we walk the land, this is the skin, all right, of this dragon that we're riding. This is the skin, okay? And if you look at in your body, we are looking at reflections of everything that's us outside of ourselves. So the land being the skin, and these pyramids on top, you have to look at your body as far as how you look at your kidneys, and you got these pyramid shaped like adrenal glands sitting on top, right? Now understand this, why I say skin. What's your third kidney? Your third kidney is the skin. You get what I'm saying? How does that have any significance with the sun when it hits your skin, and how that even impacts your endocrine system, your pineal and pituitary gland, how all that starts to kick in online when we look at these pyramids and we start to talk about how conducive they are based on the shape, right? And the little gold cap on top, the structure and how they're laid out according to constellation Orion, and then how it's perfectly aligned to that pole star. Those things, when you look at it, we say these are tombs and ancient structures just to hide dead people. You know, there's much more to this. But a lot of the times we go to these pyramids and we're not really even like trying to look at it for, it's just look at it. They'll go and they'll take selfies like, you know, just a vacation. It's just a trip. You know what I'm saying? Not taking into account to really look at the size of these stones, look at these structures, and not get wowed by the fact that these things are like really wonderful structures. Is my internet okay, by the way? I don't want to make sure that I'm not over here glitching or anything like that, because I did disconnect from this weak ass Wi-Fi that we got over here. And then I'm gonna open it up to a little Q&A before I cut it off. But the thing that I want to talk about with the children in particular, you know, they're in their world. When they say to enter the kingdom of heaven, you have to be childlike. See, there's like they put you in a state where you're looking at heaven as a place. Heaven is not a place. Hell is not a place. It's a mental state. So what you're doing is kids are actually creating heaven. See, like right now, my son's outside playing with dirt, sticks, and rocks. You get what I'm saying? But he's in his world. So if you look at it, it's kind of like this. I could be in a movie theater and I'm looking at a movie in a projector, right? There's a projector behind me, and let's say there's characters on screen, but it was produced, that movie was produced by somebody. But I get so immersed into that movie, right, that I may want to even associate with that character, but I didn't movie yet, it came from my imagination. You get what I'm saying? But a kid who's playing in his world, for example, it's kind of like everything is dark and like it's daytime right now, but he's playing with these rocks and sticks, but he's creating his own universe, his own movie, just with sticks and rocks. But here's the important thing though. There's no ulterior motives, and it's unconditional. You're not trying to get anything out of it. See, a lot of times adults are trying to get something out of, let's say, tapping into their inner child for, like, you know, spiritual power or whatnot. A kid ain't focused on spiritual power or anything like that. A kid is just basically, you know, just being a kid, you know? And again, as a successions of nows and what you're doing in your life is just a way of doing things, but you're acclimating to this illusion because you're in a system. This is how the system is. Hexagon is spontaneous. So that's why, I'll hear, like, let's say, for example, certain people online saying, that they do things on the fly, they do things spontaneously, just not planning it out and whatnot. And this is kind of like how it is to be a child, because it's not pre-planned. You kind of rob the experience when it's pre-planned. When it's spontaneous, it is like being a child. Sounds like Tao Te Ching. I gotta look into that, bro. I've never heard of that. So does anybody have any questions or want to pretty much talk about anything in general? So yeah, I was gonna go just cover. Not gonna make it too long. I just wanted to cover some little strong points, basically about the child. The Here's another thing with the child, the inner child and whatnot. When they make you stop doing things, let's say, right? Like a parent makes you stop doing things. They'll throw a temper tantrum. You'll throw a temper tantrum, right? Lovely to see you, Organic Intelligence. Thank you. And then you get older. Let's say with this illusion that you get older, you'll start to come into a point where you have skeletons in your closet. You have things hidden because of the fact that society didn't deem these things acceptable. So you hid these things in a closet, right? That's why it's important. We just experienced the Leo full moon as well. Yeah, that's right. So we start to that's why it's important to do, like, true success is doing what you really want to do, right? You want to do, you're a successful individual. If you're doing something you don't want to do, okay, it is important to ask yourself, why am I doing this, right? For what reasons? Who are you and what are you, right? So if I'm at a state and a point in my life where life is supposed to be where you just play, you know what I'm saying? You're just gonna play. It's not meant or designed for you to work so hard. They program you by telling you the pyramids were built by these slaves, and they built these things in ways that sound outrageous. Where we even use conspiracy theories of aliens helping them out. That's how far out they go. Like, that's why it's just to bring in extra topics, ideas. All these ideas keep people busy looking for things outside of them because these things are very interesting. I got into the phase where I was looking up a whole bunch of alien things at one point. Bunch of alien stuff. I was very fascinated with these alien things. And if you look online, these alien topics are huge, right? Now, aliens exist if they exist to you, but I've always been mesmerized by it. But I don't feel aliens are what you're told aliens are. Like, you are the actual alien in actuality. But all these things are happening when you look at the viral and bacterial world, okay? And when you start to see how these things come from a planet so far, far, far away, you look at the word influenza, right? Comes from the word influence of the stars, right? And these stars even influence you, like Branson just talked about. We went through full moon in Leo. They influence you on an astrological level. So energetically, on an astrological level, these stars influence you, right? But there's a viral world that's also invisible, so invisible that it's hard. You can't see them under a light microscope. And the thing is that these viruses have no life to them. They program you by telling you killing a virus, but you can't kill a virus. There's no life to a virus. A virus actually needs a host. So when you start to think about your body consists of trillions, all right, of viruses that outnumber the bacteria in your body, right? So you're made of trillions of cells that are actually exactly like a little individual human, sentient human is. They have their own immune system, respiratory, excretory system, and they even have an organ like organelle, right? And the way their conditions are is based on your perception of life, because your mind is the government for these cells, right? So when you start to look at these viruses that come in contact, right, These viruses, first of all, 2% of what you are makes you the individual you are. Thank you to the viral kingdom. They're responsible for some form of the evolution that you are. Now, when you start to look at the 98% junk DNA, okay, how is it junk, right? How is it junk? What's junk about us? You get what I'm saying? There's a lot of people who say that we only use a certain percent of our brain. We don't use a certain percent of our brain. You choose to use a certain percent of your brain based on how you've been told things work out here. And sometimes you got to look at it and really get past the material part of things and look at it from a different perspective, more or less from the overview of things. So these viruses, for example, what's up, Mike's Carhole? When you look at the viral world, okay, and we start to look at it, because I tied in the ISIS thesis, and how everything is coming down to evolution, right? Here's the funny part, is certain things such as single-celled organisms all the way up until like cats and birds and fucking trees and whatnot, that whole evolution thing, sometimes I look at that and I'm like, this is just part of the same illusion. Kind of like the illusion of aging. It's a successions of nows. The inner child, you are a child still. You get what I'm saying? You are a child still. Your body may have changed, right? But you are still that child. You acclimated to the environment no different than you acclimate to an environment outside of you. Like, you don't act the same way at your job that you would around your friends, right? Or around your mom, you don't act the same way you do around your friends or your girlfriends and whatnot, right? So you stop acting like a child. For what purpose? Because we're in a system that requires that. Along with that, our body is changing along with that system, right? So you start to change as the individual. You change, but you are that child. You are that child. There's not like it's gone. You always have access to it. You get what I'm saying? Like, a child has these advancements where open-minded, flexible, malleable, you have that ability. But sometimes it's just the things that you engage with, even the things you eat, and the mindset you have toward the things that you eat, or the mindset you have toward the things that matter to you. The more things that matter to you, the more things materialize to you. And it's about literally sometimes divorcing yourself from all these things and being way beyond these things. You may even engage so much in this physicality that if, let's say, for example, somebody cuts you off, you may get raged up and fixed up about it. And what does that mean? That means you're consenting and engaging in a human-like act. And meanwhile, if you stay in the mentality that you're way beyond that, that is nothing that, like, make it like a mosquito crossed your path. How is that affecting you? We are ecosystems. That's DNA, God eternal within the body, organic intelligence, flu frequency, light upgrades. Yeah, and you know what's funny? When you look at this, I'm gonna link the video in the description of this video with the ISIS thesis. This new viral strain that we're all afraid of actually has electromagnetic properties, but it also has light emitting properties. That's the whole thing. And here's what's funny though. The same way I said that as a child you get modified to act a certain way, restricted to do certain things and whatnot, when you take your body and you introduce a laboratory made strain of something that's original and organic to what you are, you're separating yourself from the original state of what you are. So you're coming into this planet saying born into sin, but you are separating yourself from everything from the moment you start speaking language, from the moment you start putting shoes and disconnecting your feet from the earth through the rubber insoles. Because again, that if you look at it, the soles are your feet. Your soul, your individuality is tapping in to the skin or the electromagnetic properties of this planet, right? The skin. Breathing properly is something that a lot of people don't do, but because of the anxiety, fear levels and whatnot that we go through at times, those are things that tend to affect your breathing patterns. But that's all tied down to your heart rate frequency, which is tied down to your time and what you do with your time. You know, like life, for example, like we people start to talk about money and whatnot, and we say, wow, the money. You know, some people have more of it, some people don't, but it's a consciousness, right? That's a consciousness, and these things are attracted to you based on that consciousness. But the money is no different than what's in the actually in the air. So let's say, for example, you go outside and you're breathing properly. Like, what do you get out of the air is no different than what you're getting from foods. If your body's malnourished, you could be eating the healthiest meals. You're not necessarily absorbing all these things. You get what I'm saying? So if you prime yourself mentally and physically, you're able to extract life force from the air, which is actually extremely abundant. But now when you look at what they're doing in the planet, cutting down a bunch of trees, cutting down, polluting the waters and whatnot, you think that this is not affecting the consciousness of the planet to some extent? Like, just as far as, like, let's say and look at all the stuff that you hear from like the Amazon rainforest and whatnot, how that's been slowly but surely being taken over by man and whatnot. But again, if we're looking at the skin of the planet, we look at those pyramids and we say the adrenal glands connected to it. Why are these adrenal glands so important? Have you ever tried to channel or move energy through your body and you feel like sometimes you can't handle that energy to some extent? That's because the adrenal glands, all right, are either not functioning properly, or you're starting to stimulate them in ways that you never have before. All right, because there's times where I've been in meditations and I've felt like I've had energy going through me, but it's so intense that I have to wake up, and even upon waking up, I'm like shaking and like, I don't know, it's like a nervous jitter that I have for like a few minutes, and then I say to myself, well, what the fuck was that? But then the more I actually, stay with that, the more I realize that I am actually opening channels that were actually blocked, and I'm allowing things to flow now that were blocked before. And that's why these things, kind of like a hose that's been blocked and then it just opens up, the water just flows out, and you think that these things don't have a beneficial impact on how you're able to connect dots and your life being synchronistic to some extent outside of you, even because the things that are unfavorable, they're only unfavorable, that's subjective, you know what I'm saying? But it could be unfavorable to you, but don't forget, they're unfavorable for a reason. Things like that happen sometimes to fall apart, to make space for the stuff that you're meant to be doing here. Because whatever you have here going on, a lot of it is I'm going to read that in a second, but a lot of what I have here going on, let's say, has been is me acclimating to what I think I'm supposed to be, based on the things that I've been trained as a child to do, based on parents, environments, friends, teachers, priests and whatnot. So now what happens is that when I get into certain states of meditation, I'm opening certain channels, but things are also starting to appear to fall apart when you do shadow work. And these things are meant to fall apart because you are starting to align with things. It's making space to things that you are actually meant to be doing in your life, right? This is where opportunities and synchronicities start to happen. However, enduring is one of the things that actually says that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It's kind of like a flu, right? When you have a flu, a virus or whatnot, you're meant to endure these things. These are upgrades. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So what does your body do? Your body's building a memory and a defense. But what happens if you're processing these flus and these fevers and whatever virus is going through your system right now? What if you're able to process this in a way where I just said, if you're breathing air, what are you getting out of the air? If you're eating foods, what kind of nutrients are you getting out of the foods? If you're processing, it appears to be a horrible thing, but what am I getting out of it? That's the whole thing. There's something happening, right? I'm going through a catabolic phase. Things are breaking down. My body's creating a condition to eliminate a pathogen. But what happens, right? I'm building a defense. I'm building a memory to it. Everything has its pros and cons, but even when something appears to be terrible, it still has its pros. There's still something that you get out of it that's actually beneficial for you. When you eat foods, you think that that's something that's making you feel good, but in actuality, that's something that's a huge sacrifice for the body, because you're requiring a lot of energy to break that chemistry down. And depending on what's in you, if you haven't cleared stuff out, such as like parasites or certain bacteria that isn't beneficial to you, because bacteria and bad bacteria in the body, and good viruses and bad viruses. However, certain things are actually feeding off what you're putting in, and you get the bad end of the stick. Sometimes that's why you don't feel fulfilled even when you eat food. You know, if you were eating a proper biologically appropriate diet and your body was actually primed to absorb nutrients, you could eat one meal and be healthier than somebody eating 6 times a day. You can actually have B12, which is a bacteria, recycle in your system 7 micrograms for years. There's people who take supplements of 25 to 5,000 micrograms and they're still B12 deficient. Some even get injections and they're deficient. Why is that? Because your body's not utilizing. There's no deficiency. Your body's just not making do of what it needs. Like the soil on the earth. My plants may appear to have a nitrogen deficiency or a phosphorus or a iron deficiency or a calcium deficiency, right? Is the plant really deficient, or is it that the soil got compromised? The bacteria that's responsible for processing organic matter got compromised, and it's kind of like that motor stopped working, or one of those strains stopped working, right? Because it wasn't covered. Maybe the sun maybe baked it up. It got too hot. You know the moisture levels. That's pH, right? Potential for hydrogen. Why do you think the key to health in your body is pH, potential hydrogen? Why do you think hydration is the key to health? But it's not from water, it's from actual fruits. Because water, if your body's acidic and you're drinking water, right? Most of the time, that's like me taking a potted plant and dumping a gallon of water in there. Most of it is coming out the drain hole. It's not to say that that plant literally on the water. You know what I'm saying? Most of it came out the bottom. But it drank, but the moment you put it back outside in 98-degree weather, in a couple of hours, it's already dried up again, right? So the bacteria gets compromised. So when you're eating fruits, why it's alkalizing? I mean, why it's hydrating is because it's alkalizing. So you notice how when the environment's very hot and dry, then that's acidic. That's what dries up the land. But in an alkaline environment, that's where you even got mushrooms starting to come out, because the mycelium network thrives in that moist, cooler, darker conditions, right? But it's also hydrating, and you got more bacteria under there. And that mycelium network is responsible for feeding the plant underneath, and in kind, the plant feeds that mycelium through the plant underneath, because the conditions of that mycelium don't survive above ground. So that's the reason why it's a symbiotic relationship happening. You know what I'm saying? So that's why with your body, for example, that's how it basically works. You want to hydrate with fruits to alkalize your body, cool it down, and then, you know what I'm saying, you're able to hydrate properly. Because when you're hydrating, what's happening? You're getting rid of cancerous cells. You're getting rid of stuff that doesn't work out. But however, here's the thing though. Let's say if you're trying to cleanse your body out through that little detoxing process, you're going to get something called withdrawal symptoms. This is where the discipline comes in. That's why it's important to have that discipline. And yes, let me read that real quick. This, Brandon said, that's where I love Zen's teaching, that the experience of the meal is more valuable than the chase for the perfect menu. I'll have a splendid glass of golden elixir. How much is that, sir? How, sir? Best menu ever. Yeah, and that's another fucking excellent point. Because here's the thing though. When you look at the golden elixir, okay, which is a practice called Shivambu, whoever doesn't know that, that's basically a lot of people who can practice urine therapy. And a lot of athletes actually even have engaged and practiced in this, right? Now, the reason this is beneficial is because why the fruits, especially if you're growing them yourself, why these fruits are so beneficial over the ones you buy in the supermarket is because the ones that you buy in the supermarket have already been cut well longer than you wanted. Sometimes they're cut when they're not even ripe yet. And this is actually detrimental, because what's happening is that you actually draining out the life force a lot faster. When something is ripe or perfectly at the point of picking, the life force bar is full, right? And something picked underripe tends to be more acidic than something that's picked ripe is more alkaline or more neutral, right? So when you pick it and let's say if I cut a watermelon off the vine, the life force is intact. Don't forget, nobody has touched it either. Mainly in supermarkets, it's been in dark boxes, moved from a truck. Many people have touched it, and that actually kind of messes the chemistry of it. You get what I'm saying? And a lot of the times, here's something that I've actually noticed also. Using a metal object to cut into that fruit can affect the chemistry as well. So sometimes even using different methods or techniques to break these things open can actually have more of an impact, which I'm actually going to start to practice this with like wooden objects to try to break this open. But this is all an experiment. I'm not telling you to go change your way of doing things just to cater to living rigid lifestyle. These are things that you can do. You know how why I say it's like it's beneficial to do that? Because I did this with my son. We went to a farm and they have a bunch of chickens there, but they're all free roaming and they're eating earthworms off the ground, but they got a bunch of dogs watching them from, you know, getting attacked from coyotes or any birds from up above. And I go to this farm often, but I've had these eggs freshly laid where they've never even been refrigerated. Let's say they laid this egg yesterday. I was able to have that egg, and I actually ate these eggs raw. And I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm not exaggerating. It gave me that same rush of energy that I felt when I was in that meditation. You know what I'm saying? It was like a life force energy that you feel. Like this is where I start to say like you're supposed to get energy from food. And most of the time, you notice how when you eat foods that don't belong in your body, you tend to yawn and get tired. You're like, and you're like about to pass out. Well, when you eat, let's say an egg, and it's freshly laid from the chicken, and you eat it raw, goddamn, bro, I felt like I took 7 shots of espresso. You know what I'm saying? Now I have this experience when I eat these fruits from my garden as well. You know what I'm saying? The moment I pick out all these blackberries and stuff like that. Now, don't forget, there's different levels of things you may experience because these fruits will kind of give you more of a, like I mentioned before, when you're in the garden and you get these downloads, you start to connect like things that you have in mind, and then synchronicity starts to happen where the information starts to come to you in the form of technology. It could just be hunches, inspirations, and ideas. When it's with an egg, it's totally different. It's not going to do that. The egg, for example, is doing it where it's giving you a physical type of energy, but it is also it's hard to explain. The energy is kind of like you feel like your adrenal glands and your autonomic nervous system is moving properly, and then the fact that you're intaking life force, you're kind of kickstarting these adrenals to move that autonomic nervous system, and you're able to eliminate waste a lot quicker. All right. Now, I'm going to tell you something. These things are not backed up by scientific evidence or scientific fact. You know what I'm saying? And many people will say, well, Zigzag, these are anecdotal claims, you know, and people discard anecdotal claims when in fact, anecdotal claims are powerful because they put the power in your hands. I'm able to talk to you about this because I made these experiments, which were experiences which lead to wisdom. It's not something I read in a book and say, hey, you know, this is what this egg could do if you eat it raw, or this is what. No, I'm telling you what I felt. And if you ever engage to try it, then that's on you to try it. And it's not to say hold that same expectation. It's just being present with the food that you're eating. A lot of the times when you're listening to information, you're consuming information, right? But the key to it is to be silent so you can actually listen to the information, because silent and listen is interchangeable, right? Then you're able to really grasp the nutrients somebody's talking about. When you're eating foods, there's people who are talking shit, text messaging, they're listening to something else, but they're not really present with the food. I saw this one video that's brilliant by Marina Abramovich, which a lot of people don't like because they say she's like Satanist and fucking like evil and whatnot, which whatever. But she made a video where she speaks on when you drink a glass of water, all right, and you drink it, but you close your eyes and you drink it, and you do it so slowly that your body is actually absorbing the water, and you are actually, with that attention and the fact that you're so present with the water, you're actually adding life force to the water. So this goes on another level than just basically using like, you know, flowing water or rocks or anything like that. It's present. Now the urine that I was talking about before, the urine in your body is moving in your body, right? It's moving around in your body. When you introduce this chemistry, you're actually taking water that's full of life force. Now, the whole thing is, you got to understand, you may be under certain scenarios, conditions, and let's say certain states of being that may be unfavorable. Here's the benefit of drinking the urine, is that when you drink the urine, okay, your body is processing it, right? And you are actually cleansing that chemistry out. It's like this, like if you have negative ions you attract from the earth, you give off positive ions. You ever hear people say, oh, I leave my problems in the hands of God? This is God body. But if you use that elixir, many people use it for spiritual benefits or for health, but it can also be to cleanse and purify energetically your space as well. You get what I'm saying? Where you're taking this, and it's also realized as the fountain of youth for that reason. So when we start to talk about, what keeps you younger and whatnot, look at vampires, man. We're all vampires. And we do this, we vamp off things and we don't even realize we're doing that. Sometimes we maybe engaging in conversations and whatever it may be, but I can't think of things off the top of my head. I had points on that topic a long time ago and I completely forgot about them, but sometimes and it's good to be mindful of these things, but we're always trying to vamp off something. We're always trying to get energy from somewhere when energy is readily available in the air. You know what I'm saying? Many people may feel tired. The first thing they want to do is grab an energy drink. You know what I'm saying? When instead of finding out why are you low energy to begin with, where are you investing your time and energy into to begin with? You know what I'm saying? And those are the things, because time is, do you ever hear people say time is money? Your time is connected to the heart, because if you're in fear, your heart rate frequency changes, right? And the reason I tie that to time is because if I'm in an experience where I'm bored out of my ass, my time's going to be perceived to be slower, which means time's an illusion. And with somebody else, it's going to go a lot faster if they're having a good time, right? But their heart rate frequency may be matching to the harmony of their environment, right? So somebody meditating, you notice how they slow their heart rate down, so much so that it's also anti-aging because you're slowing time down. When you're fasting, right, you disconnect from a physical thing outside of yourself, which is you, but you disconnect from the world. Just like you're in meditation, you are now speeding other things up, right? So when you're also looking at it from the what the hell was I talking about before? Oh, the vampire thing. Vampire. So let's say, for example, when you in your urine, you got stem cells, you got filtered blood, right? How does a vampire recharge himself? A vampire recharges himself by drinking blood, right? But the key to this is that it's also 95% water. You know what I'm saying? And it's the right kind of water. It's not the dead water that you're going to buy in the supermarkets. Now, when I mentioned the Marina Abramovich thing before, was because just that act adds so much life force to that water. But a lot of people, let's say, when they take out their urine and they're ready to drink it, they're like, oh, and they get disgusted. Just even that alone, you're programming it to some extent where you're looking at it with disgust. That actually adds a certain chemistry to it. And it's the first initial one. You ever hear people say first impression, last impression? See, this is important because that first act is the real way you feel about that. You get what I'm saying? It's kind of like somebody saying, how can I love somebody if I don't love myself? It always starts from you first. You get what I'm saying? So you got to be mindful of why you even feel disgusted to begin with, to even do that. It's all programming. You get what I'm saying? It's all programming. What else was I gonna? Oh yeah, so and I know I had that. And by the way, like this video if you're over here, that helps my channel out a lot. And that's pretty cool. That'd be something cool that you guys can actually do back in return for me, is just hitting that green thumb up there for me, because we all got green thumbs. See, we all got green thumbs, right? It's just that how do you see, people look at things as like bad or good. You are the bad and good. It's just, where are you trying to swim in what waters? You know what I'm saying? It's like, you got you can have a green thumb in nature, you got to have a green thumb in the business world. I can start counting money like this, you know what I'm saying? But it's all based on the attraction. Because what am I giving off, right? They say it's love. If it's meant to be, let go, and if it's meant to be, it'll come back to you. But the reason why, just like I mentioned before, if I give love away, it can only come back to me, right? Because I'm giving love away. But I have that frequency in me. If I'm giving empty love, I'm not going to get it back in return, because I don't really love myself. Do you ever hear people say, I don't trust anybody? The reason you don't trust anybody is because that frequency doesn't exist in you. That means you don't even trust yourself. In order for you to trust, that's why I tell people, I trust everybody. It's just the moment you break it is when it's done for you. It's like a Coke can. Once you crinkle it up, it's like you can't straighten it back out again. The same way. You get what I'm saying? But I really never have those issues because I know where I am at energetically. That's the whole thing. And I know when I'm in a fucked up space. I'm aware of the people I attract. You get what I'm saying? And the whole shit is that when I attract these people, if I'm not aware, what do? I respond inflammatory. And what am I doing when I respond inflammatory? If this environment is me inverted inside out, then what am I doing? I'm consenting to an inflammatory condition in my body the same exact way. Because the only way that you get inflammatory conditions or dis-ease is when your body is not able to eliminate waste. That's the key to health. Hydration, because if you're dehydrated, it's stagnation, it's degenerative, right? So if your body's not moving things, what doesn't move tends to get rotten and stale. When things don't move, they're dead. So everything is always moving, right? Always changing, right? Like I mentioned before earlier on in the video, you're still the child. Your body changed. You're acclimating with the body, but it's only an illusion. You get what I'm saying? So because you believe in that aging process, you start to feel like you're actually more tired or less energy, or you can't do certain things that you did as a child, or you can't grasp certain things like a child can. You know, a child, we look at like certain people can learn things quickly. It's not even, it's that you're trying to learn with the ego. Like a child, you know what's crazy? My child learned Spanish in Colombia in 1 month. I didn't speak a lick of English, right? In school when I was younger. And all I did was just talk Spanish to the people in school, and they spoke English. But the fact that I wanted so badly to communicate with them, okay, it's like we still made it work. And eventually I started to learn. I learned English in like 2 months. You know, it was a little broken, but I learned it. And then all of a sudden, now look, I speak English perfectly and I speak fluent Spanish, right? So the whole thing is, what happens? It's a childlike curiosity. You know what I'm saying? There's no conditions. There's a lot of people who say, I want to learn another language to become a millionaire. But there's an ulterior motive, which could be beneficial. That's called a goal. But know how to separate that childlike mentality to the intellectual or the ulterior motive side of things they're doing them. Because I realize that even sometimes people saying, oh, I can't grasp what it is you're saying. It's just kind of like, in a way, it's letting go. Like, you ever try to fall asleep? You can't fall asleep. But then you're like, fuck it, if I can't fall, whatever. And you just lay there, you fall asleep, you just let go. You know? It's like whatever you hold on to tends to get stronger to some extent. But people put the focus on something that's not really where you want to put the focus on. You want to put the focus on something that you want embraced in your life. Like, but I try to look at it where I'm embracing the cosmos. I'm embracing the things that we look at as, you know, not beneficial, right? We look at, for example, like I said, we look at there's gnarly viruses, there's good viruses, there's bad viruses. I'm not making a medical disclaimer. I'm not a medical doctor. Do your own research. But viruses are responsible for upgrades. And the crazy thing is that all the viruses that you hear of known to man all exist within you already. A child playing in dirt is strengthening his immune system, his or her immune system, because they're interacting with the virus's bacteria that's all over, right? But when you're always too clean and whatnot, you're more vulnerable than if you were dirtier, you know? So look at demons, for example. Demons are categorized as evil, yet they have characteristics to be helpful, right? Angels, demons, it's like, I don't want to talk about that in this video, but I'll do that in another video, because that'll get into a crazy ass topic that's going into like just looking at things from the point of subjective, how I even mentioned like people in history, how they've done certain things, and then we come out from a space like, even like when we talk about veganism, that's rooted out of the concept of good and evil. You get what I'm saying? Religion is made out of the concept of good and evil. But the reason we need these things is because we don't understand the root, which is you. You get what I'm saying? You're the root, right? The reason I may stop eating meat is because I have a realization that, you know what I'm saying, I don't want to eat these animals because they're my brothers and sisters, or they're my immediate reflections or versions of me, right? So then I may stop eating these animals because I genuinely have that realization within me. But then there's some people who may just look at a violent video of a fucking of a cow being slaughtered, and that gets them to change because it pulled on their heartstring, right? That's the whole thing. So now it's like you're rooting it on the concept of morality and whatnot. So it's kind of like this. What do religious people do? They show you how Jesus was tortured and slaughtered and whipped, and then he was hung on a cross and whatnot, and then that pulls on people's heartstrings. I watched the movie Passion of Christ in the movie theater many years ago. You know how many people I saw crying around me? And for some reason, I'm like, man, these people are crying, but I don't feel like crying. Am I a bad person? I started to ask myself this. Am I a bad person because I'm not crying? But then I saw everybody else around me crying. But then now I have an understanding. You know what I'm saying? It's not to say that I was cold-hearted or anything like that. I just didn't have an attachment to that. But people get attached to it, and upon that attachment, that weighs you down. You're attached to some human shit. Even looking at Christ getting whipped, that's a human attachment. You know what I'm saying? Because I know that that's not what it is. A lot of what you're saying sounds like Tao Te Ching. It's a very short book. In a day or two. I mean, I appreciate you telling me that, man. I don't know what that is. You have black and white zigzags behind you. So, you know, and like I said, most of the stuff that I have came to realize or ran across and stuff like that, my life has been very synchronistic. You get what I'm saying? Where people say, man, because look, I'm talking about 4 years ago. I was literally in New York. I was bartending, partying. If I would have met somebody like me back then, I would have said this motherfucker is a fucking nut job. You know, I would have said this guy's nuts. What the fuck's this guy talking about? And then I'm looking at this now, right? We could start to say this. My life became synchronistic, but I became aware of the fact that I was actually in a very innocent, childlike state where I was open to learning, right? The same way I just said, a child can learn a language quickly over an adult. It's not to say the adult can't do it. It's just the adult is more on that intellectual side, right? Rather than really absorbing that information. But when I was coming to, I was having these experiences like through meditation and whatnot, but I had this curiosity and I didn't have fear. That's the whole thing. Because fear, the same way fear shuts down your immune system, fear shuts down your ability to experience anything further because you're closing yourself off. When you're scared, you may close your eyes, right? People say, my third eye is closed. How do I open my third eye, right? If it's an eye and you close your eyes when you're scared, why would your third eye be open if you're in fear? And then ask yourself, why am I in fear? What the fuck do I, like, you know what's crazy? I realized this too, because this is back when I was fighting, when I was doing MMA. A fearful man's courage is another man's fear, okay? The moment I start to smell fear in the other person, I become more courageous. You hear what I'm saying? If I'm in a fight and I see blood, I'm like a shark. I'm going in now for attack. I know the guy's injured. So it gets me, now I could be dead tired. I could be fucking like, just, telegraphing. But the moment I see blood, now all of a sudden I'm like, because I saw that, now it gave me that extra energy, gave me that extra charge. Look at, for example, the lady that picked up a 3,000-pound vehicle off her dad because the car fell on him when the jacks gave out, right? How did that happen? Where did that energy come from? Where did that strength come from? Where did that power, where did that ability, that will to just want to do it? You get what I'm saying? I made the video on the reptilian shapeshifters, right? And I started to talk about the how reptilians, for example, shapeshift and mold to their environment, right? To get cloaked. To basically, it's either to be in protection, right, from the environment, or to be predators, because they can actually camouflage themselves to be able to, hide themselves from the prey so that the prey gets close enough and then boom, they can strike, right? But the whole thing is, humans, right? We look at this as like reptilian shapeshifters. I just said that we're on the skin of this dragon. The crazy thing is that you have dominion over all the animal, all the plants, all the everything around the planet. But yet you're afraid of bugs, you're afraid of certain things. When these things are actually versions and extensions of you. You get what I'm saying? So now, what do you think happens? How can any animal or bug or insect or anything want to communicate with you and say you have dominion over them if you're afraid of them? Now, when they run and you see that, let's say a cat runs, or let's say birds don't come near you or things run away, that's because that's a mirror aspect of your animalistic nature. And the animalistic nature is man know thyself. That's the beast, right? Man know thyself. You're going to get to know your environment a lot more, because you are this environment. You are the land. You get what I'm saying? That's why in the Bible they say man comes from the soil, man dies, he goes back to the soil. You know what I'm saying? But when you look at it like this, based on, let's say, animals being able to camouflage and mold to their environment, the crazy thing is that depending on your mindset, the environment and the world starts to acclimate and mold to you. That's why they say you don't see the world for how it is, you see the world for how you are. Now, with awareness and conscious awareness, you can actually mold and shape your reality at will. Snap of a finger. You know what I'm saying? And a quantum leap would be you completely letting go of a belief system. Belief systems, you're holding on to something which still makes you sick. You know what I'm saying? And then all of a sudden now, you are able to, you made room for something when you let go of something, right? So you're allowing new things in, right? Here's the crazy thing though. What the fuck was I was just about to say fucking something. Fuck, man. Anyway, it'll come back to me. So even when you're looking at your environment, right, you can mold and shape your environment to acclimate to you, you know, because the environment is basically, you're looking at the reptilian side of you, you're looking at the animalistic side to you. That's why I said these animals that you see, sometimes if they're running away and whatnot, right, these are mirror aspects of yourself. You'll notice that when you eliminate fear, you go into a forest or a jungle, you start to hear these noises, you'll know what danger sounds like based on what you were programmed to know what danger sounds like. What's crazy is that I've seen accounts of certain yogis or people who are in such deep meditation, right, that a fucking snake will meditate with you, right? Because you notice how a snake, when you're playing certain frequencies or a flute, they're dancing, right? You have a certain kundalini serpent that rises up your spine, right? When you're in harmony and in tune, right, but you're divorced completely from humanity, these things in your environment start to dance and sing with you, you know? And that's why sometimes I'm in my garden, and depending on what's on my mind or what I'm speaking on, I hear the birds chirping like crazy, or I actually even see the cats wanting to be around me, and we're actually exchanging energy, to be honest with you. We're exchanging energies. Because the thing is, everything is energy and it's all entanglements. You get what I'm saying? Why do cats rub up on you? Why do they purr when they're on your chest? You know what I'm saying? And why do they say that cats are healing for your heart and whatnot? You know? What are the cats? What are they? There's many spiritual meanings to cats. Just like there's spiritual meaning to birds and certain insects. You know? Why do you think in Egyptian times the beetles, the scarab beetles, and these things were looked at with a certain perspective that we look at now, and we want to put bug spray on them? You know? Give me a second, my throat is a little dry over here. Have you done a video about burial versus cremation? I have not. I have not. Tint not tiny is so true. Let me see what you guys are saying over here. Organic Intelligence says your tiny strip or something after you read it went away. You know, I don't know what that is. It's so true. If you would told me years ago, I would think I was crying now. Yeah. Tint not tiny. Superhuman. Have you done a video? No. Cat's purrs a healing frequency. Yeah, it's very interesting the way cats are too. If you look at cats aren't like dogs. They want to do whatever they want to do. And it's kind of like when we talk about, you know, a dog is man's best friend, but a dog is very obedient and very submissive to man, right? And when we look at cats give you the same love in return, but however, they're not gonna bitch out like a dog does. You know what I'm saying? And then we look at a dog as a masculine energy, where they're maybe descendant of wolves. And when you look at wolves, they're howling at the moon, which is actually a masculine, you know, let's say the sun is masculine and the moon is feminine. And then you got these these wolves howling at the moon. And then the cats is more of a feminine energy. But then, you know, they're not gonna come to you the same way that a dog does. And when you look at that, I kind of look at that as like the electromagnetism part of things, you know? So hit that like if you're in here. Hit that like. Genevieve, good to see you. I'm gonna tell you right now, there's a few people that I really appreciate, and I got a lot of new viewers on my channel, you know? But there's some people that I really appreciate, and Genevieve is one of them. Danny Skylark, absolutely one of them as well. You know, Danny Skylark, Organic Intelligence, Fire Drake is definitely one of them. That's my brother from another mother. You know, there's a few people. You know, Juniperous, definitely one of them. You know what I'm saying? So there's a few people that I've since I started my YouTube have been there, but I really, really appreciate them. You know what I'm saying? And I was actually thinking about that the other day. I had that little, I don't know if you guys ever get that little mushy feeling sometimes where you're like in such an appreciation, but you're so grateful in that moment and you kind of feel so good that you just say, man, thank you. I feel really good about it. I'm just saying, Danny, Genevieve, Fire Drake, Organic Intelligence, Juniperus, and there's a few more. I can't think of them off the top of my head, but I'm really appreciate you. Really do. And I'm not just saying that. That's not just talking shit. That's real shit, you know? Um, but yeah, and I'm sure there was something else. There was something else I wanted to talk about when it came down to the child. Oh, here's what I wanted to talk about. So the child also has these superpowers because they're imagining, right? So I don't know if I mentioned this, but we talk about the kingdom of heaven. You have to be childlike to enter the kingdom of heaven, but it's like you're looking at it as if it was a place, but kids are creating heaven. You get what I'm saying? They're creating heaven, they're creating hell, they're creating everything. Their imagination is something that we neglect, right? We neglect that imagination, and that's actually our superpower, our belief, faith, and imagination. So when we start to look at, let's say, for example, even our parents saying that Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny exists. Yeah, they exist, but they exist to a system, just like Jesus Christ doesn't technically exist as a man. Us even anthropomorphizing it as a man diminishes the power and the godhood of it. You get what I'm saying? Just putting it into as a man, or even God. When we talk about God, you know what I'm saying? We're putting it as a man. You know what I'm saying? There's something I wanted to talk about, and it has to do with this. I remember now. But these things, like Easter Bunny, Santa, they could just be an energy from something opposite to what it is that would favor you. That's just an example. You know what I'm saying? But we're putting it in as a thought form to cater to something that's actually helping you out. But in actuality, we're giving our power away to some extent. You know what I'm saying? But there was a dream, not a dream, but I had this happen to me where I was in a dream where I was telling you I was in like one of these dreams that I felt myself coming back out of the dream, where I actually observed myself waking up, right? This is where I started to realize that you never really, like, there's people who say, I'm a spirit and I perceive dimensions. You don't perceive dimensions. You are these dimensions. These dimensions are actually, you experience them here, just like you experience hell or heaven here. You get what I'm saying? You can experience hot and cold, alkaline, acid, masculine, feminine, positive, negative. You experience the dimensions here just like you experience different frequencies. Okay? These dimensions is pretty funny how when you take 1, 2, 3 and add it up, right? 3, 4, that's 6. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1 is 6. Then you got 4, 5, 6, right? You got the totality of that will always equal 6, and then 7, 8, 9, right? The totality of that number will equal 6. You got the 3 6s there, right? And we have 9 dimensions. People say there's more than 9 dimensions, but in actuality, man, when you start to look at the number 10, you go back to 1 with a 0 at the end. That's just ones and zeros that you're experiencing here. And everything is just based on like how you collapse things into existence as far as information goes. But what I'm perceiving here is I am the dimensions. You get what I'm saying? I am the dimensions. But spirit, shapeless, formless, odorless, colorless, right? You're looking at it as saying I'm perceiving it like I perceive, a human experience. Like I'm having an experience here through this human vessel, and I can say I'm perceiving, something above 3D. I perceive 3D, right? But certain bugs can't perceive past certain dimensions. Cats, their eyeballs are structured a certain way, just like goats. They perceive life a different way than we do. You get what I'm saying? Now, the percent of what we can see as far as the color spectrum goes, out of darkness comes light, right? But when we look at, let's say, even just dark or black, black could be all the colors in one, and it appears to be black. But you can't see shit because there's no light emitting from them. Now, whatever light emits from them is basically based on where you're putting your energy and attention to perceive that light. Like Financial Guru saying that, let's say, for example, you want to buy a certain car. Now you start to see it everywhere. You get what I'm saying? It's not to say that that car was never there. You're just paying attention to it now more and you're actually seeing it. So it's not like people say the universe is showing me this car now. You know what I'm saying? So let's say, for example, where I was getting to was that when I was coming out of this dream, right? In a sense, I was the ocean, right? I was the ocean and it was raining, but I felt the water, the raindrops hitting the ocean. You get what I'm saying? I felt the drops of water hitting the ocean, but it did not, it wasn't like I was feeling it in my, like if water was touching my body. You get what I'm saying? So it was weird because I was the drops of water hitting the water and I was the water feeling the water hitting the water. It was weird because I realized I was like the whole entire fucking environment. Like I was the whole thing. But I didn't have that human person. Like, you know, when you have a dream and you're walking around and you're talking to other people, but you feel like you're in a body. It was like I was the environment. So now I start to say, okay, now I'm like looking at Brand Zen. Good to see you, brother. So now I start to say to myself, okay, then the dimension, what was that? Where was I at? You know what I'm saying? It wasn't a place. I was just in a frequency. I was like I was channeled into something, but my body never came online, but my consciousness kind of like was transferred to the everything that I see outside of me. You know what I'm saying? Like I merged into everything. So now here's the crazy thing, is that when we start to look at the viral world and we start to say, okay, these viruses are responsible for the evolution of your species, or we are these aliens to some extent. Your consciousness rooted here, right? But you are basically the same exact viruses that are coming from these planets, because you're looking at these planets outside of you are a reflection of you. Just like the stars and planets you see outside, and then as above, so below, you see the people. We are all stars as well. And we even have an influence on each other based on language, based on how we impact each other energetically as well. Sometimes just our energy alone can have an impact on somebody, right? So when you start to look at these viruses now, these are you. But we're only perceiving these things in the perception of us being rooted in the body. So let's say, for example, like I said, when you take a psychoactive plant, and you have a altered state of consciousness. You notice how they call it an altered state of consciousness? The plants have no brain, no eyes or anything like that, right? So you start to say, wow, I just had this experience and it was weird. But were you having that experience, or was the plant experiencing that experience through you, right? But you believe in you being this physical vessel so much that your consciousness just stayed rooted right here. You get what I'm saying? So that's why whenever you look at, for example, these viruses the same way, they need a host. And when they come into you, right, as far as an upgrade goes, the same way I may get a download in the garden, the upgrade comes down to some form of an evolved state of consciousness. Because even like, for example, Christ, money, poverty, all those are consciousness. Everything comes down to you and a consciousness. But once you, like again, from that dream that I merged out from, I was completely divorced from my body. You get what I'm saying? I was still alive, you know what I'm saying? But I was not one with my body there. You get what I'm saying? So you know how when you come out of body or when you have a dream, you're always saying that you're attached to that silver cord, right? When you're in your mom's womb, you're attached to the umbilical cord, right? But it's kind of like that baby is your mom. You get what I'm saying? And your mom is that baby to some extent. So it's like there's no separation. Of basically, the baby in that womb was all water. Technically, even though the mom's belly grew, there was technically nothing there. It's still metaphysical because it's still in the belly of the mom, and it is not a physical thing. You get what I'm saying? So right here, when I look at it, I looked at my body as not even being here, but I became the environment. I potentially would have been there as a person on the water. I was the water and the water falling on the water. It's just weird to explain, man. So these viruses, again, they're invisible, right? Quantum world of consciousness here. But something so small can be so big and impactful. So something so small is really a giant, and sometimes the giant is really so small, you know. But all these things are just an illusion. Just like I made videos on like leaving, I left a video in the description where these illusion rooms, you know what I'm saying? It appears for you to be in a room where somebody's a midget and you may be a giant, but it's just all based on the environment and that perception of how you see things. So things may be set up away here with these angles of light to make certain planets or stars or things seem so far away when it's really not that far away, you know? So you know how you got a rearview mirror and they say objects in mirror may appear closer than they are, right? And that's just a mirror. So when you're looking at this mirror out here through these lenses that you call goggles or Google, right? Things appear to be so far out, but in actuality, even you just closing your eyes, you basically brought your entire environment in at one blink. Just like things can change for you as far as perception goes in a snap once you kind of see where the trick is at. So you know a magician doing a magic trick can fool your perception or your senses, but once you kind of like, if you were to catch that slight thing that he was doing to the trick, it kind of changes everything, kind of changes the whole thing. But yeah, that's all I pretty much wanted to cover for this video. Any questions or anything like that, and leave a like on this video if you like it. It does help my channel out a lot. If nobody has any questions or wants to talk about anything else, that's all I wanted. I made a video on this, but I didn't post it. I made a live just to get enough time to do this. One thing I will tell you before I go though is I'm putting the live videos that I have done. I'm putting them. I'm gonna upload them to my Patreon, and then I'm also you know, if you guys, of course, want to leave a donation, I do have my PayPal link in the about section of, you know, this channel, which actually helps out a lot. I'm actually going to be launching the Spanish channel today, so I'm gonna put up my first introduction video there, and I'm gonna start making my Spanish videos there. And you know, again, like I said, anything that you know, you guys have questions on or anything like that, leave them in the comments of this video. Don't forget to like this video. That does help my channel out a lot. Much love to everybody. Thank you for, you know, participating in the chat. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for being here, and we will talk soon.